Welcome to the WaveMakers podcast by the Ocean Opportunity Lab. In this podcast, we dive in with fantastic female founders from around the globe who are changing the game in ocean and new energies. Let's dive in. Hi, joining me in studio today, all the way from Nova Scotia, Canada, I have Christine Ward-Paige, founder of eOceans. Christine is an inventor, entrepreneur, and scientist. She has a PhD in marine science and is the founder, CEO, and lead scientist at eOceans. Welcome, Christine.
It's great to be here. Thank you so much.
So, Christine, can you first start explaining to us what eOceans is focusing on?
eOceans is focusing on reinventing the way that science is done to make it near real-time, inclusive, and accessible to all. The reason for this is that, as you can imagine, there are many crises that are impacting our environment, our ecosystems, biodiversity, and our health. And there's a $700 billion deficit in science, education, policy, and action. And so we're trying to make it real time so that we can start to make, instead of guessing, we're starting to make real time decisions that are based in data.
We love that. And I would love to hear, Christine, a little bit about your personal journey and the commitment that led you to become an entrepreneur and shaping a different future with the oceans.
Okay, I'm unsure where to start with that. I mean, I have a long history of being out in nature and then going through the academic university, undergrad, master's, PhD, postdocs in science and understanding everything from fisheries and pollution. For example, I did a global project on manta rays. So manta rays, if you're familiar with manta rays, big charismatic species. So people fly around the world to see just that one species in 10 locations. So very important species in all these locations. And so alarms started to ring when they started to disappear. And so I was hired to evaluate the status of manta rays and their threats. So I gathered data from ocean explorers around the world and scientists around the world, 600,000 observations in 90 regions of the world, and found that although only 2 countries reported catching manta rays, so when every country is supposed to report what they caught to the FAO. And so we found that only 2 countries reported catching them, but they were being caught and sold in markets around the world, including next to places like the Maldives, where there are hotspots of them, and where people fly and are really important for their economy. And so that discrepancy helped them get on the endangered species list. And so that was a great win. But again, it was published in 2013 and it's so out of date. So if we're going to look at the status of manta rays, we're still citing that 2013 paper. What's changed since then? And so that's the way that science works. We collect mountains of data, then we analyze it for one question at a time, and then we publish it. And even breaking science is still years out of date. And so this is where I was working for government in Canada and in the US and academia and industry. And I just thought we're just too slow to keep up. We're always studying things so far behind and spending billions of dollars and then still having a $700 billion deficit. So that's when I said, I've got to stop this. And so I left my government job to sort of reinvent the way that science is done, still being able to ask questions and answer it. But that's sort of what took me to where I am today in creating eOceans.
So in an ideal future, you would have access to real-time scientific data.
Not just the data, because there's so much data that's being collected every single day. It gets parked on our desktops. It gets parked in drives. It gets parked into warehouses, like global open access or fair, findable, accessible, interoperable, reproducible data sets. But there still depends on someone like me, a data scientist, to pull the data, to ask the question first, to get funding, and then to pull the data and then to analyze it. And then to report on it. If in the case of the manta ray project, if my data had been not just used to answer that one question, but had been used to understand fisheries, to design marine protected areas, and to been repurposed for all these other reasons, then I estimate that we can unlock $291 billion of time and data by using the eOceans platform and not doing everything manually. So if you go to any university, government, NGO, who's studying oceans or environments, there's people that are either collecting data and parking it or analyzing it for one question at a time. And it's just super inefficient.
I definitely get that. And I wonder, I mean, that's key challenge by itself, but what has been the biggest challenges, surprises, or achievements over the years since you started eOceans?
So when I first started, I mean, I think it's more the communications. So there's a few key components to that. One is when I'm talking when you're starting a startup, you're talking to people who are not in your sphere. So I'm talking to business people who don't know that science is still manual. So if you're only given a 1 minute or 3 minute pitch, you have to show them first that science is still done super manually. And that takes more minutes than you have just to set up the problem, because they can't believe it. They're like, what? And so when the light bulbs go off, that's when I love it. And yeah, so I think that's the biggest challenge, has been in the communications of just how slow. So I've recently been thinking of an inventory system. If you imagine if businesses like big box stores only did an inventory once every 10 years. So they went into the store and they counted all the stuff that was left on the shelves. They would have gone out of business 10 years ago, right? Because you wouldn't have
Their bosses would have been fired.
Their bosses would have been fired, and you would have had nothing on the shelves, or you'd have all the wrong things on the shelves. And so that's how essentially we're managing our fisheries. That's how we manage our endangered species, pollution, and all those things. So yeah, that's I think maybe like a good analogy for what environmental and ecosystem resource science looks like.
Perfect illustration for me as a non-scientist. Really love that. And then I wonder, Christine, what type of supporters, or who is it that have really paid it forward from the earlier days that enabled you to move from governmental role and into where you are today? Who is it that opened the first door for you, or who has really made like a significant difference on your journey?
Well, I guess I have to credit my own family, like my upbringing, for that. It's not somebody necessarily in this journey. Yes, early on, I gave a little pitch at a local incubator, and the CEO there, who has since left, but he got it right away. He said, whoa, sensors aren't going to help save the oceans, but people can. So that was like this. He got it right away. He has since left, unfortunately. Lots of other people. I'm in a part of the world where people keep telling me that we're not an innovative community. Although we try to think that we are not an innovative community. And so they're risk averse, they don't understand. And I got that a lot when people would say, oh, I don't understand. If I can't touch it and see it, then I can't understand it. Even the CEO of another ocean-based organization. So I had a lot of pushback there. So I really had to dig into my past, and where I was brought from is I saw this vision, and I have to bring this vision to the fruition. So I had to be scrappy. I had to do all the parts myself, essentially. And that's really what's brought me here, is that, I guess, unwillingness to give up.
Yeah. True grit and stubbornness. I love that. Where you are today, can you share with us, as this podcast is also built and produced with a huge ambition to enable female founders and owners to connect and make sure that we can scale really good and important solutions? What are the ideal type of partners, customers, segments that you are seeking to team up with for the next stage of your scaling? What are the type of resources that you need to further grow eOceans onwards?
Yeah, so we've gone through various phases. So the design and development we've patented. So I had to do quite a lot of the work stealthily. And so we patented the solution, or it's patent pending. And so now we're in the next phase of marketing. So I've built out a website, and now we need to tell people. So if anyone is in government research, especially where you're in Europe, is that Horizon Europe, and anyone who's moving towards open science and really digging into some of the stickiest global challenges on biodiversity, on the oceans, and they're still manually analyzing data, that's who I want to be talking to. So whether it's governments managing fisheries or wildlife, the blue economy, anyone that's doing those things that are still spending more than 40 hours a year with manual processes, they need to be talking to us and trying to figure out how to make their work faster.
Thank you. And what about commercial stakeholders?
Commercial stakeholders, so if you're talking other businesses that are collecting data and processing data, absolutely.
Corporates and actors that are, potential partners, customers of you.
Yeah, so, well, those would be all anyone who's currently manually processing data, that would be a potential customer for us. But also anyone who's developing technology in the ocean space or in the environmental space. So if you're collecting eDNA, acoustics, all that data, they're now currently providing raw data to their customer. Instead, if you pumped it through eOceans, you can deliver it already processed to their customers. So we can be a customer channel for that. And then on the other side is, I know you have quite a few people who are ocean explorers. And so if they're going out and they can be documenting. So imagine if you're going from A to B and you're documenting whales or pollution that you see, that data can be going to all the different players along the route and participating sort of more in participatory or citizen science is what people call it. So there's lots of ways to get involved.
Excellent. That is super. Thank you. Sorry. Speaking of which, we both have kids and mine just came home from school. So, well, we'll cut that part. I'm sorry. Would you just redo, Christine, the last sentence? I'm so sorry.
I don't remember what it was now.
So your ideal customers and explorers.
Okay, so yeah, there's two types on the customer side. There's customers that are already spending time analyzing data, so more than 40 hours on a project. They're the people we want to be talking to. Then within your network of people, there would be the two things: the innovators, the people, the organizations and the businesses that are collecting data and processing data or going out to sea. And so we can be a channel partner, so feeding that data through. And the other side is the ocean explorers. So if you have anyone who's an ocean explorer, they can become part of the global movement to track our oceans. Whether you're walking the beach and you just want to log some pollution that you see, or some great things like if you see some baby seals or something like that, some sharks, or if you go out fishing. So all those things can then become part of the global monitoring. So every piece of the puzzle really matters, and it tells the piece of that part of the ocean story in that point in time. So every time you log, they all get stitched together, and eOceans is doing that.
Excellent. So we can all be our own eOcean citizen scientists in this.
That's right. Yeah.
That is super. And then I wonder, Christine, if you look a bit further into the future, you are coming of age and you have really delivered on the vision and the commitment that you set out to do with eOceans. What will be the key contributions that your work and organization has delivered to our world?
I would say there's three things. One is uniting people. So across disciplines, across perspectives, fishers with scientists, with policymakers and tourism, everyone working together in the same place with science-based information. So building bridges between those communities, which have unfortunately gone in very different and in somewhat imposing ways, even though they're often going towards the same goal. The second is that we start to invest properly. A lot of investments, billions of dollars of investments are going into conservation, into science, into policy and action and education, but a lot of it's guessing. It's all based on theory of change rather than on actual data. And so once we have actual data to feed in and make those decisions, then those investments can be accountable. Like I started the conversation, we have these global crises, multiple crises. Which ones should be tackling? Which ones get the biggest bang for the buck? And we have created the biodiversity ledger, the global biodiversity ledger inside of eOceans. So it's essentially tracking all these things in the same way and time. Just the same way, again, like the inventory, it's tracking it all. When we put more into this space, what's the impact that it has? And that's what I think we need to have.
Thank you. Now, I think you touched partially upon it, that you're now looking to get out there to market your solutions. But can you share with us, what are the biggest challenges that you are facing right now? How do you plan to overcome them? And how can we, TOOL and this audience, support you?
Yeah, so one is to tell people. So that is really the biggest challenge. Is I get booked. I email people and everyone books me. Like I have very high percentage of booking rate. And so people book me for demos and then that next week is pretty booked up. So then I email more people. So it's, if like a podcast like this can help me tell more people so that when I don't have to keep emailing everyone each individually, it would be great.
You can have an inbound
And
flow
inbound.
instead.
That's
Yeah.
right.
Well, let's try to make that happen.
Yeah.
And then, in accordance with our values and principles, and really building this collective sisterhood of female founders and owners, uniting and creating business together, changing the world, we believe that strength is built through openness and sharing our vulnerabilities. So we ask all of our guests to share with us one of your own biggest challenges, how you work to overcome it, and reflect on some of the life hacks or advice that you want to share with other founders and women out there to inspire them on their own journeys.
Yeah. Okay. So I guess my biggest personal challenge is that I want to solve so many problems. When I open the news, I subscribe and I read so much news around fisheries, blue economy, biodiversity, all these different things. And every single morning, there's probably 50 things that I say, oh, we can help with all these different things. And so it's, I guess the idea is, the problem that I have is focusing. So many different things when you go into business, they say, what's your beachhead market? What's your target segment? And I honestly don't know what that is still. So it's aquariums, fisheries managers, governments, all blue economy, startups, all these different sectors. And so and First Nations, that's another big one where you're studying salmon and anyway, so I think you could see right from my answer that that's probably my biggest challenge, is the focus part. And so what I try to do is to look at you have your market and assessment and you stay focused and you make to-do lists and but yeah, I'm not very good at staying focused. So, and I own it. I'm okay with that.
That is great. And have you encountered some hacks, some very specific hack that enables you to stay more focused, even while you are like in the process of working with it?
Hacks, I think, is just being clear. So even if breaking down the parts of all the things that you need to do, so it's not just one big target of this, you give yourself targets within that target. That's, I think, the best hack that I have. But yeah.
Thank you. And then, Christine, we asked about the resources you need, but then on the other side, can you share with me which kind of resources do you represent that you can enable towards other entrepreneurs with relevant solutions related to your operations?
Well, I guess taking an eOceans perspective is that if you are starting any consulting company or fisheries, NGOs, exploration companies, if you want to do research or education or enabling more, even under the nature-based solutions and carbon credits systems, that if you want to get accountability and transparency into your organization, then eOceans is kind of a no-brainer that it would do all those metric tracking for you. So that's what we've built it for, is really that we're all spread too thin, and enabling that automated metric tracking and engagement is like the only way that I think we can build and unite together.
Perfect. We will make sure that when this pod go live, we will make sure to tag a good bunch of people we think will fit with that.
Okay, great.
And then I'm very, very curious, Christine, which female founder or owner is it that you would have loved to hear from and have featured on the WaveMaker podcast going ahead?
Okay. There's two female founders that I work with that they may not be founders by the scalable startup, depending on which box you're saying are founders. But Zadie Afrin, she is in Fiji and she's uniting scuba divers for the blue economy. So she's doing great work. She's worked in policy and with communities around the world on uniting people together towards a fair and equitable and sustainable blue economy. And then Liz Ferguson, she's at Ocean Science Analytics in California, and she's doing great education and research, and also one of our original users of eOceans, so one of our pilot testers. And use cases. So she's studying a marine protected area, the biodiversity, to show that it has the value it has to her community in California. So those would be the two that I have.
Perfect. Thank you, Christine. We will check them up and get in touch with them. And lastly, as we also wish to make the doors wider and open up our industries for new talents, what would you say are the key generic skills and capabilities needed for young people entering our sectors?
That's a good question. And coming from a science background, previously I would have said data analysis. Like everything you had to do was data analysis. But now that we've put that into eOceans, I really think it's going to be storytelling and uniting people together, sort of that partnership building. And so that's, at least in the space that I work in, that is the next thing that we really need.
Thank you. And what's your best advice for any young talent listening in today that are, eager to get into ocean, start working within more the impact and innovation part of our industries?
Yeah, so I think it goes, there's kind of two buckets there. If you're on the business side, go into universities, talk to this scientists and the oceanographers, the marine scientists that are working to solve the problems, but not in a necessarily a business scalable way. And work with them, let them lead, be the MBA that supports that. And the other way is, I think that most universities need to have more business savviness throughout the master's and PhD level so that they can be starting to think about how to get their solutions and the things that they're working on out of the universities and into the real world.
That is great advice. Couldn't agree more. So that's all for today's episode of The Wavemaker. Thank you so much, Christine. And to all of you out there, stay tuned.
Thank you.